My name is Hannah Pierce, and I am 31 years old. Last Christmas taught me something I should have learned years earlier. Some families do not invite you to the table because they love you. They invite you so they can enjoy watching you sit there unwanted. Then call it a joke when you finally notice. Christmas dinner was at a restored rail terminal turned luxury restaurant outside Milwaukee. Brass chandeliers. Polished stone. Fake warmth. It was exactly the kind of place my father loved. Expensive enough to impress strangers. Intimate enough to disguise cruelty. Gift boxes kept sliding across the linen tablecloth. One after another. Each wrapped with absurd care. Each open to applause and inside jokes. Warm little speeches families give when they actually mean it. I waited longer than I should have. I even smiled longer than I should have. Then I asked the simplest question in the world. Is there one for me? 2. My father, Marcus Pierce, didn't hesitate. He leaned back, rolled his eyes, and said, "Oh, please, you should be grateful we even let you sit at the table." My Aunt Jolene laughed immediately. "Be glad we still remember your name." My Uncle Wade laughed too. The kind of laugh that says humiliation is harmless if it happens often enough. My younger sister Brielle gave me a brittle smile like she wanted credit for not laughing louder. I remember the sound of silverware against crystal. The way nobody looked embarrassed. The way they all kept eating after that. Like I was just part of the entertainment, and nothing more. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I just looked at my father and said, "Good to know." Then I stayed long enough to make them comfortable again. That was the part I replayed later. Not the insult. Not the laughter. But how easy it was for them. How practiced. How final it sounded. I left after dessert without making a scene. I walked through the decorated lobby past the giant Christmas tree, the couples taking photos, and a violinist near the staircase. I sat in my car with the engine off, hands on the wheel, replaying one sentence. Good to know. Good to know what I was to them. Good to know what I wasn't. Because the truth is, I wasn't the daughter they celebrated. I was the daughter they used. Brielle fit the image my father liked. She worked luxury residential sales. Dressed beautifully. Smiled on cue. Never challenged him in public. She was the daughter my father could summarize in one sentence at a country club table. I was the daughter with steel-toe boots in my trunk, code manuals on my desk, and a career most people didn't understand until they needed a building declared safe. I'm a fire protection engineer. I spend my days reviewing sprinkler layouts, smoke control failures, occupancy loads, egress widths, and the invisible details that keep panic from becoming tragedy. My father used to mock that. My daughter checks hallways and ceiling pipes for a living. He once told a group at brunch, smiling like he'd said something adorable. He never mentioned that developers, insurers, attorneys, and city inspectors called me when millions of dollars depended on whether a building could legally open its doors. And that mattered because my father had a new obsession. A high-end wedding venue in a converted lakeside mill called Wintermere House. He told everyone he was building it with his own hands and his own vision. That was a lie wrapped in expensive marketing. For months, I reviewed contractor submittals late at night, rewrote egress plans, flagged hazardous decorative materials, corrected non-compliant banquet layouts, and introduced him to people in my network who took his calls only because I made them believe the project could be salvaged. I told myself I was helping family. Christmas showed me what family meant to them. The first week after Christmas, I stopped answering calls. I let texts sit unanswered. I started deleting family photos from my phone. Not in a dramatic purge. In a methodical sequence. A lake trip, where my father praised Brielle for lighting up every room while asking me to move folding chairs because I was better with logistics. Delete. A birthday dinner where Jolene told me I'd be prettier if I smiled with my teeth less. Delete. The Wintermere groundbreaking photo where everyone held ceremonial shovels except me. Even though the corrected safety package in my father's hand was my work. Delete. My best friend Casey Miles came over one Friday night with Thai food, and the kind of honesty that doesn't flinch. She watched me delete another photo and said, "They keep hurting you because they think you'll always confuse loyalty with availability." She was right. My father never called to ask how I was unless he needed a consultant's opinion disguised as daughterly support. Jolene loved to introduce me as the smart one in that chilly tone people use when intelligence is both compliment and accusation. Wade only remembered my number when an insurance form confused him. Brielle was the hardest because she specialized in passive permission. She watched cruelty happen and adjusted her smile depending on who else was in the room. A week into January, my father sent an email instead of texting. The subject line read, "Quick code question. No apology. No mention of Christmas. Just extraction." He attached revised floor diagrams for Wintermere House and asked whether increasing banquet capacity would raise any issues before his lender's final review. I stared at that email for a long minute. Then I did something small that changed everything. I did not answer. Instead, I called the attorney who helped me set up my consulting side work and asked a simple question. If a client keeps using my prior work product and implied support after our relationship is over, what is the cleanest way to separate professionally? The answer was boring and beautiful. Written notice. Clear limits. No emotion. No accusations you can't prove. No family language. Just boundaries. 2 days later, my father received a formal withdrawal notice from my firm. It stated that effective immediately, I was no longer reviewing, endorsing, consulting on, or permitting the use of my name, Annalise, prior correspondence, or recommendations for Wintermere House or any affiliated project. It also required that all parties copied on past coordination emails be informed that I was not the engineer of record and not available for further clarification. I sent it to my father, his general contractor, the project manager, the architect, the lender's risk consultant, and the insurance broker who had leaned heavily on my informal reassurance that the venue could eventually satisfy pre-opening requirements. I didn't threaten anyone. I didn't accuse anyone. I simply removed the one thing my father counted on without ever valuing. My credibility. Within days, questions that had been postponed returned. The lender wanted a third-party review before releasing another construction draw. The insurer refused to finalize binders until a new life safety consultant certified corrective actions. A decorative installation company had to remove imported drapery fabrics after flame spread issues were flagged. The same issue I had warned my father about months earlier. Then the city scheduled a follow-up inspection and found the upstairs bridal suite corridor had been narrowed by millwork changes, reducing egress clearance below what had been approved. Small problems alone. Expensive problems together. Catastrophic problems when your entire business model depends on launching in spring wedding season. My father still did not apologize. Instead, he left a voicemail that began, "I don't know what game you think you're playing." Jolene texted, "This is childish. You know how much your father invested." Wade texted, "Family doesn't do this to family." Brielle waited longer, then texted, "Can we talk? Dad's really stressed." That message was the moment the mini twist fully clicked in my head. They weren't shocked I withdrew. They were shocked I had the power to withdraw. They assumed my competence belonged to them, like a family utility bill that always gets paid by someone else. If you realized your family only reaches out when they need something, would you answer to keep the peace? Or stay quiet and let consequences speak? Comment. Answer or stay quiet. By February, the damage widened. A regional wedding planner paused referrals after hearing the opening date was unstable. A corporate event client withdrew an inquiry deposit because my father couldn't guarantee occupancy certification. The bank requested updated cost projections, and the numbers were ugly. He had counted on a smooth finish because he thought he still owned my labor. He didn't. I hadn't attacked him. I simply stopped saving him. Then on a gray Tuesday morning near the end of February, my doorbell camera lit up with 4 familiar faces and 1 terrified truth. They had finally figured out what I took away. My father stood on my porch in a wool overcoat, pounding on the door like force could reopen access to my life. Jolene was beside him, hair pinned perfectly despite the wind. Already offended by my silence, Wade kept scanning the street like public embarrassment might still be negotiable. Brielle stood slightly behind them, pale and restless, hugging her arms against the cold. They had driven hours because my unanswered calls had run out and the project timeline was collapsing faster than my father's pride could manage. "Hannah," my father shouted. We need to talk. Open up. Jolene stepped closer. This has gone far enough, Wade added. We're not leaving until you come out here. Then my father slammed his palm against my door again. You're destroying this family over a joke at Christmas. That sentence actually made me laugh. I didn't open immediately. I made coffee first. I stood in my kitchen barefoot on warm tile, listening through the speaker with an almost clinical calm. 2 months earlier, I sat at a table and learned what I was worth to them when they believed they held all the power. Now they were learning what happens when contempt finally becomes expensive. I opened the door, but not all the way. Just enough to look at them without inviting them in. My father started talking before I said a word. The lender is freezing our draw, he snapped. The insurer is demanding a new consultant. People think there's some major safety issue. There are several safety issues, I said. I wrote about them repeatedly. Jolene cut in. Sharp. Don't be smart. I looked at her. That's one of the things you all hate most about me. Isn't it? That I'm useful in ways you can't control. Brielle flinched. Wade muttered. This isn't helping. My father kept going. Too wound up to slow down. You didn't have to humiliate us like this. Humiliate you, I repeated. At Christmas dinner you told me I should be grateful you let me sit at the table. Jolene said I should be glad you still remember my name. You all laughed. Then in January you emailed me like none of it happened. So don't use the word humiliate like it belongs only to you. Jolene folded her arms. We were teasing. No, I said. You were measuring. You wanted to remind me where I stood. Wade tried softer. Your father's under pressure. If this project fails, he loses a fortune. I took a sip of coffee. Then he should have treated the person holding the matches with a little more respect. Nobody spoke for a moment. Not because it was dramatic. Because it was true. My father lowered his voice and switched strategies. What do you want? There it was. The question underneath every interaction we'd ever had. Not how are you? Not what do you need? Just terms. I wanted a family. I said. That option expired. Brielle stepped forward. Voice thin. Hannah, please. The bank says if the March review doesn't clear, they can call part of the note. Jolene has been trying to find another consultant, but nobody wants to inherit the file this late. We just need your help one more time. One more time. That phrase built the whole disaster. My father tried to reclaim authority. You're my daughter. I answered. Exactly. Not your unpaid contingency plan. Jolene's composure cracked. You're really doing this over hurt feelings. No, I said. I'm doing this over a lifetime of being treated like a utility. Christmas was just the first time I stopped pretending not to notice. Brielle made the mistake of saying what she had probably rehearsed in the car. Dad compared you to me because he wanted you to push yourself. I stared at her. No. Brielle. Dad compared me to you because he knew I'd keep coming back and you'd keep benefiting from it. That landed. Brielle's face changed first. Then my father's. I stepped fully onto the porch so the cold hit all of us equally. You drove here to ask for help. I said, fine. But you're going to hear the whole thing this time. Not the edited version that protects your comfort. I didn't invite them inside. I stood on the porch while they remained in the cold. That felt appropriate considering how many winters of mine they had spent unbothered. You all want to make this about Windermere House. I said, but that venue is just the invoice. The bill came due years ago. I named the moments. Steady and specific. Awards dinners where my father praised Brielle and called me logistics. Brunches where Jolene dressed insults as jokes. Threads where my licensure was treated like a punchline. Every time competence became obligation and affection became conditional. My father inhaled sharply. You're being dramatic. I smiled without warmth. The lender's risk consultant called me last week to confirm I was no longer affiliated. He asked whether my withdrawal was due to unresolved life safety concerns. I refused to characterize beyond my written notice. That forced them to assume the most conservative interpretation. That's why your draw froze. My father went still. He hadn't known that part. Jolene looked at him. Then at me. You could fix this, she said. Technically. Maybe. I replied. Personally. No. Then I handed each of them a copy of the document I had prepared. A no-contact notice drafted by my attorney. Not a dramatic court order. A formal instruction that future communication with me was limited to documented channels and only for unresolved business records related to prior project correspondence. It also stated I was declining future personal invitations, gatherings, and informal requests for professional advice. My father's face went pale. Jolene refused to take hers until Brielle quietly pressed it into her hand. Wade read his and looked embarrassed. My father crumpled the first page halfway. You can't be serious. I have never been more serious in my life. I said. Jolene snapped. So that's it. You're throwing us away. No. I said. I'm returning what you handed me. You spent years showing me exactly where I stood. Christmas was just the moment you said it plainly enough that I could stop lying to myself. Brielle started crying then. It didn't move me the way it once would have. Not because I'm cruel. Because timing matters. Tears after consequences are not the same as care before them. My father's voice softened into desperation. If the bank calls the note, I could lose Wintermere. The house is tied into the guarantee structure. Jolene put money in too. Wade brought in investors. This doesn't just hurt me. That was the first thing he said that sounded like truth rather than authority. Then maybe the lesson will travel. I said. Maybe next time you'll remember people you humiliate don't stay soft forever. Maybe next time you won't assume being needed means being owned. If your family showed up at your door only after consequences hit, would you let them back in? Or hold the line? Comment. Let in or hold? I ended the conversation there. If a records issue comes up on the project, your attorney can contact mine, I said. Anything else will be ignored. They left with paperwork, silence, and a long drive back to consequences. I wish I could tell you they changed overnight. They didn't. Real consequences are rarely cinematic. They're slower, more humiliating, more expensive. 2 weeks later, I heard Wintermere House missed its lender review and lost preferred financing terms. The opening was delayed indefinitely. One investor pulled out. Another demanded restructuring. My father had to list a property he once bragged would stay in the family forever. Jolene's contribution got tied up long enough to derail her boutique expansion plan. Wade had to explain awkward numbers to people he cared deeply about impressing. None of that happened because I sabotaged them. It happened because I stopped cushioning their recklessness with unpaid labor and credibility they never respected until it disappeared. Brielle sent me 2 handwritten letters over the next month. The first was mostly grief. The second was better. Specific. Accountable. She named moments she benefited from my silence. I didn't answer right away. But I kept both letters. Jolene never wrote. Wade sent one email through his attorney asking whether a prior code memo could be clarified for records. It went through my attorney exactly as instructed. My father sent nothing directly after that day on my porch. Silence from him was the closest thing to respect I had ever received. And me. I slept better. Not immediately. But steadily. The first week felt strange. Like stepping out of a building after years inside stale air. I kept reaching for my phone with the old reflex to explain myself. Smooth things over. Restore peace I had never been allowed to share in. Then the impulse faded. Peace can feel unfamiliar when chaos has been calling itself family for years. Walking away is not cruelty when you've been treated like a tool. You do not have to keep sitting at a table that serves everyone else your dignity piece by piece. Sometimes the most powerful response is not anger. It's distance, documentation, and a clean no that doesn't ask permission. If you want more real stories like this, subscribe and turn on notifications. The next one will hit even harder.